This is the CineSnob Podcast.
Hey there, welcome to episode 298 of the CineSnob Podcast. I'm Jerrod Kingery.
I'm Cody Villafana.
Almost two away from 300 episodes.
We've almost made it. Someone called Zack Snyder.
Yeah, it's my favorite Zack Snyder movie. I don't know if that's true. I don't think it is.
I don't think I've seen 300, actually.
I did. I don't remember much about it except it looking very, very fake.
Right.
I don't know what my favorite Zack Snyder movie would be.
I think mine is Watchmen.
Yeah, I was all right with Watchmen. I guess by default, the one I hated least would be, and this is a very low bar, would be Batman versus Superman.
Ooh.
I know, but well, I don't know. I think I actually liked his Justice League better than that.
Is his Dawn of the Dead good? I have not seen it.
I've only heard good things, but I haven't seen it either.
Okay.
I mean, it's not, zombie movies aren't really my thing. I don't really give a shit about zombie movies, other than like Shaun of the Dead, because it's funny. Yeah, I've only heard good things, but you know, everything since then has been extremely, extremely polarizing.
Yeah, to say the least.
I think the worst movie of his I saw was Sucker Punch. That's a really bad movie.
Yeah.
Of course, I didn't see either of the Netflix ones, whatever they are.
Rebel Moon,
the Scar Giver, and oh man, I don't even want to talk about it anymore. What were we talking about? Oh yeah, it's 300 episode. Yeah. So I guess
we took a journey to get there.
I guess speaking of comic books, I spent the weekend hosting some panels at the Greater Austin Comic-Con for the very first time here in Austin. I don't know how many years it's been. The show's been going on, but it's my first time hosting panels there.
Yeah.
Got to host a panel with the legendary Steve Guttenberg from. You're too young for Steve Guttenberg movies, I assume. But
for the most part,
bro had a run in the 80s with the Police Academy movies, and then Short Circuit, and then Cocoon, and the 3 Men and a Baby movies.
Yeah, my reference point for Steve Guttenberg is
Party
totally
Down.
different.
It's Party Down. He's very fond of the Party Down thing. I talked to him. Very, very nice guy. Very, very nice guy. And I told him that Party Down was one of my favorite appearances of his, and he was very receptive. Then I ran into him in the bathroom afterwards, and he was like, "Hey, thanks for being so nice." You're welcome,
cool.
Steve.
Those are always good interactions to have with non-douchey celebrities.
Yeah. Who else did I host for? Sean Weiss, Goldberg from the Mighty Ducks.
Yeah.
Who was great. He's we actually talked stand-up comedy because he does stand-up. Did you know that?
No, I don't think I did. He
was talking about, we talked about it on stage because I've been doing stand-up here and there. We were talking about a gig. He was talking about one of the worst gigs he did. And I can't remember where he said he was, but it was at a baseball stadium and it was pouring rain, and he was performing on the pitcher's mound and the crowd was in the stands.
Yeah.
Which
I've seen that setup before.
That sounds like a fucking nightmare.
Yeah.
Because I've done stand up in a big room. There's a bar near the house here that does some open mics, and you're a good 20 feet away from any people.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine being on a fucking pitcher's mound.
I'll tell you off mic. There's some really hard to watch videos of a certain comic, like tanking. In that exact setup, where they're on the pitcher's mound and they're playing to like a tiny minor league stadium with no one in the stands. It's brutal.
He was very. I mean, he said it was tough, but yeah, it was cool. He was a nice guy. He's he's, if you know anything about him, he's had his he's in recovery, doing great, and super nice guy. Very personable. He had some cool shit. I think I showed you. He was selling Mighty Ducks jerseys, like really nice hockey jerseys.
Yeah.
And then I did the Avatar: The Last Airbender panel which I don't know shit about Avatar: The Last Airbender. But it was great because there was like 7 people in the panel, and it's so popular that it just sort of runs itself. One of the women that was one of the voice actors, she was kind of helping me out. Michaela Jill Murphy is her name. She was helping me out, sort of. She was sort of running the people in the panel, like in the guests, and I was taking care of the audience. So anyway, it was a lot of fun. Thanks again for Greater Austin Comic Con for allowing me out. The big guest was, of course, Weird Al Yankovic. I don't know if you knew that.
Yes.
But I didn't get to host that panel, which would have been great. But the whole this was the HEB Center in Cedar Park, which I know you've been to. Like everything was Weird Al themed. Like every restaurant menu was changed for Weird Al. Like, and there were pictures of him everywhere, and
that's cool.
It was a lot of fun. Yeah, very well run show. I liked it a lot. I love doing that stuff, and I can't wait to go back next year, hopefully.
Yeah.
Anything else, Cody, before we move on to the meat of the show here? We're in the bread right now.
Let's get to the meat.
All right, let's throw some ham on this bad boy and get to reviews.
Here are this week's reviews.
First up, we have Twisters.
Tyler, do we know which storm we're going after yet?
Oh, why don't we ask?
Kate.
Hi, Kate. I'm Tyler.
And I'm Ben. I'm a reporter, doing a piece on American storm chasing. Tyler's letting me ride along.
And Ben just had to promise to write nothing but good stuff about me.
Good luck with that.
Hang on. You didn't say which way we were going yet. Now, from what I gather, west, we double our chances. East, well, it's high risk, high reward.
Well, go for the reward. I don't want Ben to think you're boring.
Now, boring is not usually a problem for me, Kate.
2 cells to the west are fighting over the same inflow. They'll choke each other out. This one to the east is the sky all to herself. Moisture, wind shear, instability. All the things you need to give Ben a good show.
This is, of course, the legacy sequel to the 1996 blockbuster movie Twister, Cody.
Yeah.
Were you a fan of Twister when it came out? You were a child.
I was a child. I do know that it was a staple in our home. We had it on VHS. I do remember that.
Yeah.
It had been like, I mean, I knew the touchstones of it, like the flying cow, of course. Yeah. And then over the years, it became something where I knew it from like its corniness. Like a lot of like Bill Paxton lines would get, like memed or whatever.
I don't know that I've ever seen that.
Yeah. Or maybe it was just like made fun of as like stupid lines, corny lines.
Were you a fan of the MTV Movie Awards?
Not enough to remember any pieces of it. I've only heard it in like description.
Because they used to do really great parodies, and like weaving in the footage from the actual movie. And they did one with Twister back then. I believe it was Ben Stiller and Janine Garofalo were doing the Bill Paxton and Helen Hunt parts. And one thing I'll never forget from that is they're driving and the thing where like, we've got debris, we've got a cow, and then there's a tire that flies in, and it says something like, we've got that tire that was in the trailer but not in the movie. And it was the first one of the first times I realized they made stuff for the trailer that they didn't put in the movie.
Oh.
So
okay,
there we go.
Yeah,
it's a great story. I'm glad I told it. Anyway, what'd you think? Tell us about Twisters and what you thought of it.
Well, the other piece I was going to mention that's part of my familiarity that leads into this is that I watched it recently.
Okay.
I had a friend who, I think for her birthday party or birthday, rented out a theater, Embassy, and showed Twister in the theater.
I saw Twister when I saw it the first time. It was for a friend's birthday.
Oh, really?
What such synergy!
What a world! What a world we live in.
What are we doing here, Cody? It was you know where it was? The old Crossroads Theater.
Oh wow. Okay.
And it was I've told this on the story excuse me, I've told this story on the show before. It's literally the loudest movie I've ever been.
That makes
into.
sense.
Anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I watched it about, I don't know, like 2 or 3 years ago in theaters, and I did not like it. I thought that it was, yeah, I did not think that it held up at all. I thought it was, really a cheese ball, cornball kind of thing, which I mean, I get and I understand, and possibly a product of its time as part of that, so it's hard to hold it against it too much, but I just wasn't too much of a fan of it. I did think that like the set pieces held up just in terms of like the iconic stuff that was part of that, but the movie did nothing for me. So you called this a legacy sequel. I've been kind of searching for a way to describe it because it's not quite a direct sequel, and it's also not quite a reboot because it also follows a lot of the same story beats. So I've been calling it like a spiritual remake or something like that. But
I don't think that's true. Well, maybe the final product, I feel like 100% they set out to make this a legacy sequel. That if it's reflected on screen, I don't know.
Right, but there's nothing connecting it though.
There's literally one element, the Dorothy.
Right.
From the beginning of the film. Like it's literally the same thing. So that's why it screams legacy sequel to me. Mm-hmm. There's another thing maybe we'll talk about, maybe we won't, but
it's not a sequel in the sense that like there's no characters that are either tied to the first one or relatives of the first one or
sure. And like you and I have talked about, and a lot of people have talked about, like it feels like that was the intention from the beginning, and it didn't work out. And
they kind of wrote it to be it's a standalone thing. So it is kind of weird in that it exists in this sort of like uncertain territory where I think it's more reboot than it is sequel. But whatever.
I'm still not comfortable with that, but comfortable. Okay. Like I don't get, like I give a shit.
Well, okay, so it's a sequel that has none of the same characters as the first one.
Yeah. Well, I guess. Yeah. I mean, would you call like the Alien movies that don't have Sigourney Weaver like sequels? I mean, that's a good question, I guess. Right? Like, would it be a sequel that doesn't have even if it's the same like antagonist, which I guess tornadoes.
Oh, yeah, okay. It does share an antagonist in Tornadoes. You got me there. Okay.
Anyway,
we're getting too in the weeds on this. So what you end up having is a storyline that follows, another group of storm chasers centering around a storm chaser named Kate, who, when she is in, basically, I guess she's a college student, right?
Yeah, I guess she's like a grad student or something.
Yeah, ends up trying to find ways to reduce the intensity of a tornado, and in the middle of that experience, a tragic event happens, and she basically puts storm chasing behind her and moves more into like weather. I guess I don't know if she's technically like a.
I think she's a meteorologist. I mean, that's the implication. Yeah.
Yeah, and the movie picks up 5 years after that, and someone that was a survivor in the accident with her, or the tragedy with her, finds her and brings her back to where they were from in Oklahoma to address like the growing concerns surrounding tornadoes that are becoming more difficult to predict and more devastating to the people there, and so she goes to try to continue trying to solve those problems, and while there meets and runs into sort of like we'll call it like a competing storm chaser team led by Glenn Powell, who refers to himself as the Tornado Wrangler, who essentially is like a viral video kind of storm chaser who shoots fireworks into tornadoes, I guess.
Shoots fireworks up a tornado's at. He's like a YouTuber.
A YouTuber, is it? Yeah. And they end up just having kind of like a small antagonistic relationship that sort of builds from there. So, I'm kind of two minds on this movie, because I think ultimately the movie doesn't entirely work for me on a few different levels. And I think that they are all like execution points that I'll kind of go through my quibbles there. I will say on the starting side of the good, you know, I think it's another like really great star-making performance for Glenn Powell, who we last saw in Hitman, who delivered a very similar performance in terms of just like his ability to be magnetic. I think a lot of people have weirdly like torn feelings on him in Top Gun Maverick. I think he really works for me in that role, though I will say that it's, you know, this role is very sort of similar to that role, and I hope that he just doesn't have the sort of like charming dick like character type, and that's all he can do.
Did you ever see Anyone But You?
I did. Yep, it's
sort of the same. Yeah, it's kind of this. Yeah, he's got a groove he's writing in right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I mean, and again, like the reason why the charming part of that equation works is because he's just a very magnetic personality, very, you know, got a lot of, you know, movie star qualities to him that I think really are able to shine through in this movie. I think the performance from Daisy Edgar Jones is better than I think a lot of people are giving credit to. I feel like if you've read a lot of the reviews or seen some of the commentary on it, a lot of people are commenting on her performance. I had no problem with it. I think it's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
I do think that there are some performances that don't work as well. I don't think Anthony Ramos is particularly engaging in this movie. I also don't think he has a lot to do here. But I found that to be kind of like a stiff performance. And then I think the other thing that works is that I do think that the action sequences that take place in the bigger storms are well executed. Nothing quite has the sort of like iconic nature of the first movie, where, you know, I don't know that any of these one scenes are going to stand like the test of time as being like an all-timer or anything like that, or even have staying power in the way that like the Flying Cow does. But I think that they are effective as they build and go along. I think in particular the scene that takes place, the last one where there's like a movie theater, is pretty effective in its imagery. The thing that I think don't works as much for this is I think that the movie really fails in its execution of both story beats and character development. So, you know, there's one piece, and I think we're heading into like mild spoilery territory here, but there's some question through the movie about the character of Anthony Ramos, for example, where, you know, he is presenting himself as like Kate's friend and on her side trying to make a difference. And then midway through the movie-ish, maybe like a third into the movie, you start to figure out that like he is not being, you know, a completely like benevolent person and giving back. And there are some other things that he's doing as part of this. Now, this is executed in a scene where it shows him talking to an investor for his company and basically like spilling the beans on everything. And then they treat the you know, the confirmation of what he's doing as some kind of reveal later in the movie. And Anthony Ramos doesn't get to play like the both sides of this kind of thing very well because they spill the beans way too early. So you don't have that character conflict of like, is he a good guy? Is he a bad guy? What does he believe in? What's he going to do? And so when he has his moment of choosing sides firmly, I think it lands with a bit of a thud because it didn't really, you know, earn, you know, what it's going for there. So that's an execution piece that I feel like they could have very easily doled that out in another way where, you know, like breadcrumbing this storyline instead of laying it all out there initially and up front. I also think that its character development of Glenn Powell's character is not very well executed either, this Tyler Owens character. Specifically, what I mean is that I feel like we don't know anything about the character, because the character is presented as like this like super mega douchey YouTuber where literally he's going live, he's you know, selling shirts with his face on them. He's shooting fireworks into tornadoes. He's driving right into tornadoes. And so he seems like you know, a douchebag. And then slowly throughout the process, people start talking about him as if he's like a good guy. And then on a dime flips into this like, you know, kind, understanding person, but there's no indicator of like why he's doing what he's doing. Why did he go into YouTube douchery as part of his character design? You know, like why is he egotistical? Because he's a dick for the first third of the movie. And there's no explanation as to why. Like, even if your explanation is like it's a defense mechanism, or even if he's thinking in character like, okay, I'm just doing this because it sells, and I'm just trying to make money to give back or to make a difference or to draw attention to it so I can make differences. That is not ever expressed by his character at any point. One person makes a comment talking about why they sell shirts, but that's it. You don't get any background information on like what his background is. He's almost like purposefully distant when asked about it. Like, I don't know if you remember that scene where there's a scene I think at I think it's when they're back in Oklahoma at the mom's house, and like he's given an opportunity to explain, like why he storm chases or some shit like that. And he gives like the most basic ass, like one line generic answer. And then that's it. Like there's no other follow through on it. So I think the only reason the character works is because Glenn Powell is charismatic, because I don't think that you could play the charismatic, part of this and have it be even moderately believable in like, agreement with the way his character is presented, unless you have a character that can sell both sides of it like Glenn Powell can, or an actor that can sell both sides of it. But I think its construction of that character really sells it short, and I think that it doesn't do a great job at connecting the character you see in the first half of the movie and in the second half of the movie. I don't think it does a good job bridging that gap.
Yeah, I agree with you on that part. I think that characterization wise, there seems to be the inklings of a love triangle happening here.
Yeah.
That never really get explored.
Yep.
All that said, I didn't really care. I did enjoy it. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I enjoyed the dickish Glenn Powell that showed up at the beginning. As he softened. I mean, look, I'm not surprised by anything in this movie. You're just waiting for the turn to happen. I do wonder why they decided to, okay, I've talked about this before with you, but I'm going to say it again. One of my favorite elements of the first movie is the ragtag group of tornado hunters versus the corporate D-bag tornado hunters. Mm-hmm. It's such a stupid dynamic that it's like the old the fat kids camp and the snooty rich kids camp across the lake dynamic. It's just put on a tornado movie, and they're doing it again here. Mm-hmm. But the switch up here is you start with the douchebag tornado corporate tornado hunters, like those are the initial protagonists, and then it sort of switches over, and there's no real indication as to why these guys aren't D-bags anymore.
Right.
And then like the rest of that team just sort of disappears, so you only have like Anthony Ramos and David Corenswet just twirling a fake mustache the entire time as the most evil guy in the movie.
Which, by the way, I don't know that he did himself any favors getting people hyped up for him as Superman in this part, because I think that it's a very one-dimensional.
Was he out there in front of this? Because
I don't think so.
Were they pushing it hard? Yeah, because
I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, once I didn't even recognize him at first, and then I was like, wait a minute, is that? And like, oh yeah, because he's just in a button-up shirt and a cap the whole time. There's nothing happening with the character. The only thing that really annoyed me about this movie was the idea, like we talked about, that this was supposed to be some sort of legacy sequel, mm-hmm. and whatever happens, the rug got pulled out from under it. Because there's spoiler, well, not really a spoiler, because it doesn't happen, but the character of Kate's mother is hinted at in the movie for a while, right? Mm-hmm. Like her mom invites, like the opening scene, her mom's like, come over for barbecue. And then the movie, the 5 years later, it's, are you going to go see your mom since you're here in town? All this other stuff. So the movie sets this up as, if you've seen any kind of legacy sequel or comic book movie or anything, when there's a character that's talked about for a long time and that is not pictured and not explicitly named, you're expecting some sort of cameo.
Right.
Right. That's just movie math. And this fits that description, that formula. So you're like, her mom's fucking Helen Hunt, right? Her mom is Helen Hunt. No, she's not. It's Maura Tierney, and she's just nobody.
Yeah.
And this movie the movie spends a good, a good portion of its runtime like teasing this character out for nothing. Mm-hmm. And it's so weird.
Yeah.
Like, if you knew you couldn't get Helen Hunt, why did you keep this element in here like this? Like, why did you keep because it's treated as a reveal,
right?
Almost. That's the only thing that really annoyed me. The second thing that was annoying to me was that no one in Tornado Alley knows to get out of the way of a tornado. So these these tornado hunting people have to.
There's like, huh?
Whoa.
Let me grab my canopy.
And they're having a street fair in the middle of this outbreak of just like a once in a millennium outbreak of tornadoes.
Yeah.
That sort of dumb shit bugs me. But overall, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, can I also say one more bad thing? You're about to heap a little bit of praise on it, so I want to.
Okay.
It has like some of the, and I don't feel like I'm being hyperbolic here. It has some of the worst needle drops I've ever heard in a movie. Like the corniest songs that sound like generic, like it sounds almost like the like what? How can I put this? It sounds like royalty-free music with lyrics, like.
But I mean, I know what you're talking about, and that speaks to something else that I had forgot to bring up. Mm-hmm. The first film came out in the heyday of soundtracks.
Yeah.
So it's literally called Twister the Album, and there are songs on there that are not in the movie. Mm-hmm. And I was at Target yesterday, and there is a Twisters the Album on CD, by the way. Who has that? Who's buying a CD in 2024?
Yeah.
That has the same thing. I mean, there's just a shit ton of songs on there that aren't on there. So that's another like legacy thing they brought back. I didn't mind the needle drops. I didn't particularly. It's not like I know what when you say like royalty free things with lyrics, that makes me think of like if you ever watch HGTV, like they have that shit, like where it's like a pop song, but you're like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah, but like it's worse because like the song. So it's basically like country songs, like generic ass country songs, but they're like describing the action of the movie in a way where like there's one. So like, yeah, so like when she goes home and sees her mom for the first time, the lyrics of the song are about like you can take the girl out of Oklahoma, but not the Oklahoma out of the girl or whatever. And then there's this one part where she tricks him into thinking that she's gonna go get him iced tea, and ends up going to chase a storm. And again, the lyrics are reflective of like a man will buy anything, or some country song about like swindling a man or some shit. I'm just like, could this swindling be any more on the nose? Yeah.
Oh. Anyway, so I liked the movie. I know it's cheesy. I know it's corny. I know it's stupid. But man, I had a good time.
Yeah.
And speaking of good times, Cody.
Yeah.
You did see this movie again.
Yes.
For the second time in 4DX, which has been getting a lot of publicity regarding this particular movie. Tell us about that experience.
Yeah, so the 4DX, for anyone who doesn't know, is Regal's sort of like interactive theatrical presentation. So it makes way of like the seats like move. There's water effects, there's wind effects, there's fog, there's like all sorts of stuff. And there's no 4DX theater in San Antonio. There's one in Austin. And this weekend I happened to find myself in Austin with a little bit of time to kill. So I was like, okay, let me go do this. I have a Regal Unlimited. It was like a $6 upcharge to do it. So I went for it. And I would say that my experience was, we'll call it like mixed positive. Now it's mixed because of a few things. So my first experience was that I sat down in my seat and the movie started, after 30 minutes of trailers and previews,
Right.
and like a full 30. And everyone's seats start to move back, and my seat is sitting still.
Oh man,
so,
that's my fucking nightmare with that shit.
Yeah.
It's like my thing's broken and I'm fucked.
Yeah. And this was the only, so they're grouped into segments of 4 seats. So like there's like little blocks of 4 seats across a row, and these 4 seats were not moving. So I went out and I told the manager, and his solution was go sit in an empty seat, which like, thanks, bro. That's super helpful. So I finally eventually got to an empty seat that was working, and got to experience the movie that way. And I will say that it exceeded my expectations in terms of movement. So they have like D-box seats that like rumble and shake and vibrate and stuff like this. This is like a theme park ride where your seats will move to the left and the right and sway and then go back and forth and jolt you and go up and down. And it's like aggressive, like to the point where you're kind of like popping out of your seat in like the moments of it, and it's just like rumbling and shaking and stuff like that. To the point where after the first scene happens and the effects are on, and after the first scene ends and the seats kind of stop moving, the entire theater like burst into laughter at what was going on. To the point where like the seats have seatbelts, like it is moving that much. And I think it really excels in the tornado scenes, but also in the driving scenes. It's where it's really great. And, in the movie, Glenn Powell's character is like aggressively driving off-roading in his giant truck, and then like will like cut people off and do this stuff. And that's when the seats like get to shine, because then, the movement of the seats moves along with like the truck. And like, if it makes a quick turn, the seats turn and stuff like that. So it's really, visceral and cool in those types of moments. The other really great visceral part I thought was that, the movie will occasionally move from like being on the ground to being in the air, like an aerial or a drone shot. And what it would do is like, you'd be like in the car and shaking and shaking and shaking, and then it would move to a drone shot, and then it would just like the seats would like very slowly sway back and forth very gently.
Oh, that's cool.
And like that part was super cool. I really love that usage of like shifting the camera's perspective and then giving you a different like feel to it. The other thing that I think was really great was the water effect, where during the tornado scenes, it would feel like raindrops were falling on you during those scenes.
Is it literal water?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so like it's water that feels like it's coming from the ceiling, so it feels like rain. And I actually wish they would have laid it on a little bit more thick. I would have liked a little bit more water throughout it, because it's like every like 30 seconds or something it'll sprinkle some water on you.
Oh, you like to get wet.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like the Denzel Training Day style.
Oh yeah. No, you mean smoking crack?
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Okay. It also makes use of wind. So like, again, when you hear the wind whip up, you can feel it whipping around the theater, blowing around, which is super cool. There were a couple of things that didn't work. I would say, so if you read the reviews, and there's a lot of really great stories about like how 4DX is the definitive way to see twisters. And it makes mention of like leg ticklers, which, when like an object falls near you, it's supposed to like, you could feel it on your legs.
Yeah.
That function was not working. I don't know if it was my chair or if it was the theater, but that did not work. It also makes mention of like wind blowing in your face and like hearing things like headrest speakers that you can hear it behind your ear. I didn't have that in my chair. Again, could have been my chair, could have been the theater. I don't know. And then the fog effect is just a bust. It's not very good. I don't think it's well executed. Where like there's a fog machine in the front of the theater, and in moments when there's smoke or something like that, or like dust kick up in the movie, it'll just blow out like a quick puff of fog that just like dissipates really quick. That was a bust. But I think it really enhances the visceral action sequences of the movie in a really fun way. And like, I mean, like it jostles the shit out of you. It's really fun. And I really, I'm hoping this puts a spotlight on the technology, because for me, it's like, there's some really cool stuff you could do with this technology that I'm looking forward to seeing, like how it grows, because I think it's almost there.
I mean, not to talk about old stuff, but I mean, this was part of one of the attractions at Disneyland when, 20 years ago, they had a Honey, I Shrunk the Audience show or something. Mm-hmm. And it used that technology, and like, that was actually a screen that projected like a 3D screen. Mm-hmm. And, like rats ran off the stage and you could feel them running by your feet and all that sort of shit. So the technology is really cool when it works.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily trust a movie theater to keep it up. That's the one bummer I think about it. But
I think that upkeep is going to be interesting to see if it's sustainable or again, it could have just been this theater, but I don't know. But I mean, like, it's super popular. I don't know if you've looked, but it's in Austin. It's sold out the rest of the week.
Oh, is it? I haven't looked now.
Yeah. And I think a bad marketing move to only give it a week's time, because Deadpool is moving into the 4DX next week. And so they really only gave a week of screenings in 4DX to Twisters. And I think it made like over $2 million just in 4DX this weekend. Yeah.
That's crazy.
So it's, but it's super cool. If it's playing around you, give it a shot. If you've never done 4DX before, I thought it was a lot of fun. At least makes the action sequences better. I don't know if it changes my opinion on the movie all around, but
what is your grade for Twisters, Cody?
So I'm giving it a C+. I mean, for me, I can't fully recommend it. I think it's okay, but man, it's just like the plot is just dumb as shit, and I know that so is the first one, and so is the idea behind it. But it's really hard to overlook the dumb as shit plot when like I don't have any emotional investment in the characters, because I also think that they're poorly executed and written. And I just think that there's one too many execution flaws in this movie, where I think there's like a good entertaining movie somewhere in it, but it feels like it just makes a lot of decisions that I don't know if it's just like the script was really not fully fleshed out. I don't necessarily think they're all directorial decisions, but something about like the connection there just didn't quite work for me, and it falls a little bit short.
Don't you love, by the way, when directors of like these small indies that you love move on to these giant movies, and you're just like, what the fuck?
Yeah, when I named Minari my number one favorite movie of that year, I was just waiting to see what his take on Twisters would be.
I'm going to give it a B. I liked it. I just liked it. I don't know. Yeah. I don't have anything else to say, but I enjoyed it. I recognize how fucking stupid it is, how just egregiously goofy and cheesy it is, but I enjoyed it. Let's move on to our last movie, Oddity.
Could you open the door?
What do you want?
You're in trouble.
What?
Would you just open the door? I am telling you that there is someone in there with you. Why do you want it?
He took my sister's life. I want to see what was going through his mind. You said I should visit on Danny's anniversary.
The thought of another patient showing up the front door here.
Would you allow them in?
Of course not.
My sister would never allow a strange man into her home in the middle of the night.
I didn't see this movie, Cody, but you did. So tell us about Oddity and what you thought of it.
Yeah, so this is a movie that is an IFC midnight movie, which is a
Shudder, right?
Yeah, it's a co-production with Shudder, which I think a lot of these movies are gaining a lot of steam. These sort of like IFC / Shudder movies. I believe that was what like that one that we really loved.
Oh God, there's been a lot of them.
Well, it was the most recent, the Argentinian one. What was that?
When Evil Lurks.
When Evil Lurks, yeah. I think that was the most recent success of it. But honestly, this IFC and Shudder pairing has been really great. And I think, and at the very least, is telling like super unique, sort of stories. What was it? Was it also for the the Guatemalan one from a couple years ago.
La Llorona?
Yeah. Wasn't that also IFC?
I don't know. I thought that movie was great, though. I
Yeah.
don't remember who it was. I think that was my number 2 or 3 movie of the year, whenever that was released.
Yeah. It was.
It's like an ethnic cleansing horror movie.
Yeah, super interesting movie, and I think I think they take a lot of risks on unique kind of stuff. I'm trying to vamp here to see if it was IFC and see if I'm just like
It's not. I went searching for it and I accidentally.
It might just be Shudder.
I pulled up the Linda Cardinelli one or Cardinelli one.
Yeah.
Oops, not the right one.
Yeah. So anyway, Oddity is a movie that premiered at South by Southwest back in March. I did not see it there, but I did hear good things from colleagues. And it's a very simple story about basically like it starts off with a woman who is the wife of a psychiatrist, ends up getting murdered in her home, and she has a twin sister who is like a clairvoyant who also like owns like an oddity shop of like haunted items and stuff like that. And she's also blind. I guess that's a part of the movie too. And ends up having like suspicions about the way in which her twin sister died, and tries to uncover the truth about it using these sort of like haunted items. And we've covered enough horror movies, independent horror movies here to I think where you know exactly what I mean when I say the movie for me personally was like all vibes. And right. Those types of movies where the story itself is not all that compelling or interesting, and it's just kind of like coasting on creepy vibes. And for me, that's what this movie was. I really like the way that the movie is like shot and made. So it's made by a director called named Damien McCarthy, and it's an Irish movie. And so I assume, based on like the accents and his name, he's probably an Irish director. But
I mean, probably.
I mean, McCarthy sounds pretty Irish, right?
Yeah, I would say so. Yes.
Okay. And
it's just a coincidence that some Irish named man directed an Irish movie with an Irish accent, but he's American.
I mean, could be. Who knows? I don't know. I don't know his life. But yeah. So I really like the way that it looks and it's shot. Like I think that it is effective, and it's like the way that it has its jump scares. It has some cool production design where like a lot of the movie takes place in like this barn or farmhouse kind of thing, and it makes the use of like a life-size wooden mannequin doll, and so it sort of has that sort of like haunted doll kind of thing, but it's got this really creepy look to it. And I think the production design is good. I think that the cinematography is good. I think that the way that it executes some of its like the editing of its jump scares, I think is interesting. That said, I did not care about really anything that was happening during the duration of the movie, and the only thing I could feel from it was the vibe of it all. So for me, the story just kind of landed with a thud. I kind of wished I liked it a little bit more, considering I think that it's like interesting to look at and well made. But for me, it just didn't have any kind of resonating power for me personally.
What's your grade for Oddity, Cody?
I'm also rolling with the C+ on this one. I think that there's a lot of potential for this director, who I think is clearly very talented,
and Irish.
Yeah. Okay. Good. This talented Irish director. Yeah. That's about it for me. I think it's just fine.
All right. Well, that's gonna do it for this week. Next week, Deadpool and Wolverine. Cody.
Yes.
I have seen it.
Yes.
You have not. The embargo has lifted.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little surprised by it, based on my. But we'll talk later.
Yeah.
Were you? I know you liked the first Deadpool, right?
I did. I don't know if I watched it now, if it would hold up for me. Mm-hmm. I didn't really like the second Deadpool all that much.
I remember liking it in the moment. I haven't rewatched it.
Yeah, and I'm weirdly not really all that excited about this movie. And I don't know if that's just like a combination of like superhero Marvel fatigue or like I guess like I feel a little bit uncertain about bringing back a character, even if it's not the same version of that character in a movie like Logan, which again was my number one movie that year. What I consider to be probably the best comic book movie ever. And like a perfect wrap up for that character. It's a little dubious of bringing that back.
Well, I have thoughts. We'll talk about them next week. So
yeah.
If you want to reach us, you can email us at podcast@cinesnob.net. Find us on Twitter @CineSnob, Facebook CineSnobNet, YouTube.com/CineSnob. Anything else, Cody, before we go?
No, I think it was good to we're in the heat and in the midst of summer blockbuster season, and so it's this feels like Twisters feels like the real kickoff of that, I think, and
it's weird though because it's really late.
Yeah. It is, but there's still stuff to come, and even like down into September when you get like Beetlejuice and Transformers 1 and some of those. So, I'm looking forward to the next few weeks. We've got some, at the very least, like interesting prospects coming up. So,
yeah. All right. On that note, I'm Jerrod Kingery.
I'm Cody Villafana.
Thank you for listening to the CineSnob Podcast. To read reviews, interviews, and more, visit CineSnob.net. See you next week.